Are you brave enough to uncover the secrets of Japan, land of the rising sun, land of ancient beauty? But beneath the beauty lies a darkness filled with whispers of chilling tales. These are not just stories, they are echoes of ancient fears, fears that have haunted Japan for centuries. Imagine, if you will, a time long ago, when shadows held secrets, and when every whisper of wind could be a spirit's sigh. These tales are not for the faint of heart. They reveal ancient beliefs about life, death, and the spirit world. In ancient Japan, the line between our world and the spirit world was thin. People believed that spirits were everywhere. They lived in trees, rocks, and even the air itself. These spirits could be helpful or harmful. It all depended on how they were treated. Many stories tell of vengeful ghosts. These are the spirits of those who were wronged in life. They return to seek justice or perhaps revenge. Their anger echoes through the ages. The true horror of these tales lies not in blood and gore, it lies in the unknown, in the things that go bump in the night. It's the fear of what we cannot see that truly chills us to the bone. These stories play on our deepest fears, fears of darkness, isolation and the unknown. They remind us that we are not alone in the world. North of the village of Katsura, nestled among towering mountains, lay a forest. Not just any forest, but the Aokigahara. Locals called it Jukai, the sea of trees. To step within was to be swallowed by an ocean of shadows. The villagers whispered of the Jukai. They spoke of it only in hushed tones. For the forest was more than just trees, it was a place of spirits, a place where the veil between worlds thinned to a whisper. To enter was to risk never finding your way out, or worse, to encounter the things that lurked within. The villagers knew better than to tempt fate. One crisp autumn evening, a lone traveller approached the edge of the Jukai. His name was Hero, and he was making his way home from a neighbouring village. He had heard the whispers, of course, but he was a practical man and dismissed them as mere superstition. He stepped confidently onto the path. The air grew noticeably cooler, the silence broken only by the rustling of leaves. Hero pulled his cloak tighter around him, shivering despite himself. The shadows seemed to deepen. Just as panic began to set in, Hero spotted a flicker of light through the trees. Hope surged through him. A house, perhaps, or a traveller's fire. He stumbled towards it. As he drew closer, he saw that the light came from a lantern hanging from a low branch. Beneath the lantern sat a figure shrouded in a dark cloak. Hero hesitated, unsure whether to approach, but the lure of human contact was too strong to resist. He took a deep breath and called out, his voice trembling slightly. "Greetings," he said, trying to sound braver than he felt. Slowly, the figure turned its head. Hero's breath caught in his throat. The face that stared back at him was as white as bone, the eyes two empty sockets. Terror seized Hero. He stumbled back, a cry escaping his lips. The figure rose, its movements fluid, unnatural. It took a step towards him, and Hero felt a cold, unseen hand grip his arm. He tried to pull away, but the grip tightened. Far to the west, nestled in a secluded valley, lay the village of Yumihara. Once a bustling community known for its vibrant silk trade, Yumihara had fallen silent. The bustling market stalls stood empty, their wooden frames rotting. The laughter of children had long since faded, replaced by an unsettling quietude. The very air hung heavy with an unseen weight. Travellers now gave the village a wide berth. Stories spread like wildfire, tales of a curse that had befallen the village. It was said that the villagers of Yumihara were no longer themselves. Yumihara was a village lost to the living. One evening a lone figure emerged from the forest path leading to Yumihara. His name was Kenji, a young samurai on a pilgrimage to a distant temple. He had heard the rumors, the chilling tales of Yumihara's fate, but Kenji was a man of duty and faith. He would offer prayers for the lost souls of Yumihara. As he entered the village, a shiver ran down his spine. The air grew noticeably colder. Kenji gripped the hilt of his katana, his senses on high alert. He walked past empty homes, their doors creaking open. The setting sun cast long, grotesque shadows. As darkness fell, Kenji stumbled upon a sight that made his heart pound. In the village square, a fire blazed. Around the fire, figures moved with an eerie grace. They were dressed in white kimonos, their faces hidden behind white masks. Kenji had stumbled upon the Bon Odori, the festival of the dead. But there was a wrongness to this festival. The dancers moved with a mechanical precision. Their silence was absolute. Kenji knew these were not villagers celebrating their ancestors. As Kenji stood frozen, a figure detached itself from the macabre dance and glided towards him. It moved with an unnatural fluidity. Closer it came, stopping mere inches from him. Kenji could feel a cold emanating from the figure. Then, slowly, the figure extended a hand towards him, holding a single white lily. The scent of death wafted from the flower. "Leave this place," a voice whispered, raspy and weak. "Leave now while you still can. This village belongs to the dead. To stay is to join them." Kenji's eyes widened in shock. The voice, though weak, held a familiarity that sent a shiver down his spine. It couldn't be, could it? He stared at the figure before him. As if sensing his confusion, the figure slowly lifted its mask. Kenji gasped, his hand flying to his mouth. "Grandmother?" he whispered, his voice trembling. The woman, his grandmother, who had died years ago, offered him a sad smile. "This village," she rasped, "it is trapped between worlds, our souls bound here by a grief too strong to overcome. You must break the curse, Kenji. Free us from this torment." Kenji stood frozen, the weight of his grandmother's words pressing down on him. His heart ached with a sorrow he hadn't allowed himself to feel since her passing. To see her again, even in this spectral form, brought back a flood of memories. But the joy of reunion was quickly eclipsed by the chilling reality of her plea. Yumihara was now a prison for tormented souls. The curse that held them captive was a tangible threat. He had come to Yumihara seeking solace. Instead, he found himself facing a darkness far greater than he could have imagined. He was bound by duty, by honor, and by love to unravel the mystery of Yumihara's curse. He vowed to free her from this spectral prison, no matter the cost. As Kenji stood in the eerie silence of the village square, the ghostly dancers continuing their macabre waltz around the bonfire, he noticed a figure watching him from the shadows of a nearby tea-house. Her white makeup, stark against the darkness, marked her as a geisha, but her eyes held a depth of sorrow that transcended the painted facade. She moved towards him with a grace that belied the chilling atmosphere, her footsteps silent on the cobblestones. As she drew closer, Kenji could see the flicker of desperation in her eyes, a plea for help that mirrored his grandmother's own. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft as falling snow, yet carried a weight that spoke of ages of suffering. "Young samurai," she whispered, her breath sending a chill down Kenji's spine, "you bear the weight of a heavy burden. Your heart is pure. Your intentions noble, but you tread on dangerous ground. The spirits here are lost, consumed by a rage that knows no bounds. They will not relinquish their hold easily." Kenji, though unnerved by the geisha's spectral beauty and her words of warning, stood his ground. He had to know more. "Tell me," he asked, his voice firm despite the tremor in his heart, "what befell this village? What caused such pain, such anger to linger after death?" The geisha, her gaze fixed on the spectral dancers swirling around the bonfire, her voice a low murmur that seemed to weave itself into the rustling of the wind, began her tale. She spoke of a time when Yumihara was a beacon of prosperity, its silk coveted throughout the land. She described the beauty of the village, the laughter of children, the delicate melodies of shamisen played in moonlit gardens. Then her voice dropped to a whisper, her eyes reflecting the flickering flames of the bonfire. She spoke of a neighbouring lord, consumed by greed and envy, who sought to claim Yumihara's wealth for his own. When the villagers refused his demands, he unleashed his wrath upon them, burning their homes and slaughtering them without mercy. The villagers, the geisha continued, her voice thick with sorrow, fought bravely, but they were outnumbered, outmatched. Their blood soaked the very ground you stand on, their cries for mercy echoing through the valley. But their pleas went unanswered. The Lord, intoxicated by his victory, spared no one. Men, women, children, all fell to his cruelty. Kenji listened, his heart heavy with a growing sense of dread. He could feel the weight of the tragedy, the echoes of screams and the metallic tang of blood lingering in the air. The geisha, her face a mask of grief, continued. The villagers' souls, unable to find peace, unable to forgive the injustice that befell them, turned their rage upon those who wronged them. They swore vengeance, a pact sealed in blood and despair. The Lord, the geisha continued, her voice a mournful whisper, returned to his own castle, believing his victory complete. But the villagers, their spirits twisted by anger and grief, followed. They haunted his dreams, his waking hours, their tormented cries driving him to the brink of madness. His wealth, once a source of pride, became a burden, his castle a prison of his own making. But their vengeance, Kenji asked, his voice tight with apprehension, it did not end there? The geisha shook her head, her elaborate hairstyle swaying slightly, a macabre dance in the firelight. The villagers, she explained, their rage echoing through the veil, sought to ensure their tormentor would suffer for eternity. They bound his soul to this village, condemned him to relive his crimes for all time. But to do that, Kenji reasoned, his mind struggling to grasp the depths of the tragedy, they had to bind themselves here as well. They sacrificed their own peace to ensure his suffering. The geisha nodded, her eyes filled with a sorrow that spoke volumes. Theirs was a pact of despair, she confirmed, fueled by a grief so profound, a need for retribution so absolute that it trapped them all in an endless cycle of pain and vengeance. There must be a way to break the curse, Kenji insisted, his voice firm despite the tremor in his heart. The geisha, her gaze fixed on his, her expression a mixture of hope and resignation, replied, "There is an ancient ritual, a way to appease the tormented souls, to offer them solace and release. But it is fraught with danger, young samurai. The path to redemption is often paved with sacrifice. Kenji, his heart heavy with the weight of the task before him, sought out the village shrine. It stood on a hill overlooking Yumihara, neglected but still exuding an aura of peace that contrasted sharply with the palpable darkness that clung to the rest of the village. He knelt before the altar, the scent of incense, faint but familiar, calming his racing thoughts. As midnight approached, the hour when the veil between worlds was thinnest, Kenji performed the ancient ritual, his movements precise, his heart filled with a solemn reverence. He chanted the words, their meaning echoing in his soul, a plea for mercy, for understanding, for release. The air crackled with unseen energy, the wind whipping around him, carrying whispers of anguish and despair. Suddenly the ground beneath him trembled. The ghostly dancers in the village square froze, their movements faltering, their mournful cries replaced by a stunned silence. The flames of the bonfire leapt high, casting grotesque shadows that danced and swirled around Kenji, as if the very air itself was alive with unseen forces. Then from the heart of the fire a figure emerged, tall and imposing, his face obscured by a war mask. He radiated an aura of power and rage that sent a shiver down Kenji's spine. This was the Lord, his soul bound to Yumihara, his spirit twisted by centuries of suffering and vengeance. He turned his wrath upon Kenji, his voice a roar that shook the very foundations of the shrine. Kenji, his heart pounding, stood his ground. He drew his katana, the polished steel gleaming in the firelight. The Lord paused, his fiery gaze fixed on the small wooden charm Kenji held. It was his grandmother's charm, a symbol of peace and forgiveness. The Lord's fiery aura flickered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. Kenji spoke, his voice firm despite the tremor in his heart. Their anger was justified, their pain real, he said. But vengeance has held them captive for too long. It is time for them to find peace. He held out the charm, the wood warm against his palm. Let them go, he pleaded. Release them from this prison of pain. Let their souls find peace at last. As the first rays of dawn broke, the Lord's fiery form began to fade. The ghostly dancers turned towards Kenji, their eyes filled with hope. With a final cry, the Lord, the Geisha, the villagers, all vanished, their forms dissolving into motes of light that swirled around Kenji. Standing amidst the ruins of Yumihara, Kenji felt peace. The curse was broken, the tormented souls at rest. He offered a silent prayer for his grandmother. As he turned to leave, he felt the village was no longer defined by darkness. The rising sun promised a new beginning, a chance for the village to heal and honor the memory of those lost. The village of Mizuho, nestled in a valley carved by the winding Kyobashi River, was a place where shadows stretched long after the sun dipped below the horizon. It was a village where the whispers of the river carried secrets, some whispered by the wind, others whispered by something more ancient, something that lurked beneath the surface of the jade-green water. At the edge of Mizuho, where the willows wept into the river, casting their sorrow in long, slender shadows, stood a bridge. It wasn't grand, built of weathered wood worn smooth by time and the countless footsteps that had crossed its arched back, but the hashi, as it was simply known, was more than just a passage over water. It was a boundary, a threshold, where the mundane world blurred with the realm of legend and folklore. The villagers of Mizuho spoke of the Hashi in hushed tones, their voices laced with a fear passed down through generations, for it was said that the bridge was haunted, not by the tormented spirits of humans, but by something far older, something that predated the village itself, something that dwelled in the murky depths of the Kyobashi River. It was a Kappa, a creature of Japanese folklore, a mischievous and often malevolent spirit that haunted rivers and streams. The Kappa of the Hashi, however, was said to be particularly fearsome, its presence marked by a bone-chilling coldness that clung to the air around the bridge, even on the warmest of summer nights. One sweltering summer evening, as the cicadas chirped their relentless chorus, a young woman named Hana found herself standing at the foot of the Hashi. Her heart was heavy, her steps leaden with a grief that threatened to consume her. In her arms she cradled her infant son, his tiny face pale and still, his breath no longer warming her skin. Little Taro had been sick for weeks, a fever burning through his fragile body, stealing his laughter, his cries, his very essence. The village healer had tried every remedy, every herb, every prayer, but the fever had only tightened its grip, until finally, as the sun began its descent, little Taro had taken his last breath, leaving Hana in a world of silence and despair. Grief, raw and consuming, threatened to drown Hana. She couldn't bear the thought of burying her son, of consigning him to the cold earth. In her despair, she remembered the whispers, the legends of the Kappa and the bridge. Some said the Kappa was a cruel spirit, delighting in the misfortune of humans. Others, however, whispered of a different side to the creature, a flicker of compassion beneath the monstrous exterior. Driven by a mother's love, a desperate hope that defied logic and reason, Hana stepped onto the Hashi. The air grew noticeably colder, the humid summer heat replaced by a bone-chilling dampness that seeped into her very bones. But Hana pressed on, her every step fueled by the faintest glimmer of hope that the Kappa, the creature of legend, might offer a miracle where human hands had failed. Standing at the centre of the bridge, the river flowing silently beneath her like a ribbon of black silk, Hana called out. Her voice, hoarse from grief and exhaustion, echoed through the stillness, a mournful cry that seemed to hang in the air long after the words had faded. The surface of the river rippled, a disturbance that spread outwards, breaking the reflection of the moon. A low growl, guttural and chilling, seemed to rise from the depths, sending a shiver down Hana's spine. She tightened her grip on Taro, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird, and then, slowly, deliberately, a figure began to emerge from the water. Its skin was green and slick, like moss on ancient stone. Its eyes, yellow and reptilian, glinted with an unnerving intelligence. Claws, sharp as blades, tipped its webbed fingers. This was the Kappa, a creature out of nightmare, yet possessing a strange, unsettling beauty that held Hana spellbound. "You dare summon me, mortal?" the Kappa rasped, its voice a grating whisper that seemed to slither through the air. "You dare disturb my domain with your grief?" Hana, her fear momentarily forgotten in the face of her overwhelming sorrow, held out her son. "Please," she begged, her voice thick with tears. "My son, he's just a baby. Bring him back to me. I beg you." The Kappa regarded Hana with an unnerving stillness, its reptilian gaze seeming to pierce her very soul. Then, to her surprise, a low chuckle, more unsettling than any roar, rumbled from its throat. "Life and death," the Kappa rasped, its voice echoing strangely in the stillness, "are not mine to manipulate, even for one such as I. The balance must be maintained. However," it paused, its eyes, cold and calculating, fixed on Hana. "There is an ancient ritual, A pact made between my kind and yours, a way to honour the departed and appease the river. Hannah clung to the Kappa's words, a flicker of hope igniting in her heart. "Tell me," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper, "tell me what I must do." The Kappa, with a gesture of its clawed hand, motioned to the riverbank. "Bring me cucumbers," it instructed, its voice strangely devoid of emotion. Cucumbers, the most refreshing of offerings, a symbol of life's cycle. Offer them to the river and perform the dance of mourning. Do this, and the river may grant you solace. With surprising strength, Hannah bowed her head. "I will do it," she vowed, her voice trembling but resolute. She would do anything, pay any price, for even the smallest chance to honour her son's memory, to find a sliver of peace in the face of her overwhelming grief. As darkness deepened, casting long, eerie shadows across the river, Hannah gathered cucumbers from the village outskirts. With each step back toward the hushi, her heart grew heavier, the weight of her grief a tangible burden. Yet there was a glimmer of something else, a flicker of determination, of hope against all odds. Standing once more on the bridge, the air thick with the Kappa's musky scent, Hannah performed the ancient ritual. She offered the cucumbers to the river, her tears mingling with the flowing water. And then, as the moon bathed the scene in an ethereal glow, she danced. Her movements, born of grief and desperation, were a testament to a mother's love, a plea for understanding, for solace, for some measure of peace. The river seemed to respond to her dance, its flow becoming more gentle, the surface shimmering with an otherworldly light. The air, no longer oppressively cold, felt strangely alive, as if the spirits of the river, moved by her sorrow, had gathered to witness her heartbreaking performance. As dawn approached, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold, Hannah collapsed on the bridge, her body spent, her spirit drained. She had no illusions. Her son was gone, his absence a gaping wound in her heart. But as she lay there, gazing at the flowing river, she felt a glimmer of peace settle over her, a sense that Taro, though gone from this world, was not truly lost. He was part of the river now, part of the cycle of life and death. His memory carried on the whispers of the wind and the gentle flow of the Kyobashi River. The tales whispered through the ages hold a strange power. They are echoes of ancient fears, beliefs woven into Japanese culture. Spirits and demons walked among humans, their presence felt in the rustle of leaves, the whisper of the wind. These tales, though often steeped in sorrow, offer a glimpse into the resilience of the human spirit. They speak of love that transcends death, of sacrifices made in the name of family and honour. The enduring appeal of these tales lies in their capacity to connect us to something ancient and primal within ourselves. In a world driven by technology, these ancient Japanese horror stories offer a return to storytelling. True fear is found in the slow creeping dread that seeps into our bones. The Japanese aesthetic, with its appreciation for simplicity and the interplay of light and shadow, lends itself perfectly to the horror genre. The enduring appeal of these stories lies in their ability to frighten and make us think. Ancient Japanese horror stories offer insights into the culture from which they sprang. They reflect beliefs, values, and societal norms, emphasizing respect for nature, elders, and tradition. These tales remind us of the importance of living in harmony with the natural world. They teach us about the dangers of greed and the value of compassion and empathy. Even in fear, hope remains, guiding us towards understanding and appreciation of life's mysteries.